Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. In 2014, Dominique Franklin Jr., also known as Damo, was killed by Chicago police. Activists in May 2015 held a protest against the killing and against police brutality in an event called DamoDay, which we'll see in this segment.
I'm an organizer with We Charge Genocide, and today we're lifting up the life of Dominique Franklin, who was murdered last year. He was friends with a lot of my homies, and We Charge Genocide grows out of his death and his murder by the CPD.
We do this for Damo, we do this till we free us.
My name's Ethan Beats Van Leer. I also go by Ethos. I'm a poet, an organizer, and an abolitionist born and raised in Chicago. And we're here today to represent my homie Dominique Franklin, who we call Damo, who was killed, who died this time last year. He was murdered by the Chicago Police Department. So we're out here remembering, celebrating, turning up in his memory, meeting life in the face of death.
I found out that Dominique Franklin had died. There was this moment in the city of despair, particularly amongst young organizers. And there's a woman in the city named Kaba who's a mentor to a lot of us, and she recognized that despair and the need to have a container for young people to plug into, to resist, to fight back, and to name and assert that Damo's life mattered. And so that's what we did, and we had our first meeting in early June at the Chicago Freedom School, and Miriam said, I want to go to the UN. And that's what we did, and we named it in honor of We Charge Genocide, a petition that was filed in 1951, as a way of recognizing the context that Dominique's murder fits within, right? That this is not a new problem, but also that black people have always been fighting back, and that we can learn from that history and we can work on the momentum of that history. And so our trip to the UN felt like the fulfilling of a legacy in a lot of ways.
We went to the Committee Against Torture. I think we're the first group of all young people of color to ever go to the United Nations. We staged, or young black people, excuse me, young black people. We staged a protest, 2 protests at the United Nations. We walked out on a session and stood up with our fists in the air for 30 minutes in solidarity with Lakia Boyd, who was killed by Chicago police. She lay for 30 minutes on the ground before an ambulance came.
So we just won reparations, which is historic. It's the first time in the history of the country that reparations are being given out to survivors of police violence. And up next, over the summer, we're going to be working a lot on stop and frisk and working on trying to get an ordinance passed to reform contact cards. We're going to be working on that campaign along with our working group that does Know Your Rights and Cop Watch training, so really trying to fuse those things together, reaching out to partners who are also working on that kind of thing and thinking about how it's distinct for folks, right, who maybe are Arab, right, or Arab Americans, and what are the ways that contact cards fit into the ways that they're being criminalized.
Their response was that all their practices were effective and that it was going well, and pretty much what we were saying was false. And actually when they gave this response to us is when we stood up for 30 minutes, because we knew as soon as they mentioned tasers as safe and useful materials, we knew we had to stand up. When we got back to the States, there was 0 word. We were on the international news, left news, everywhere. You couldn't not see us, but in the United States media there was zero recognition. So the work I'm doing is continuing to build spaces without policing, push abolition as a framework to addressing policing, and just like creating the infrastructure we need to no longer rely on what they tell us helps us. That's where I'm headed.
I think it's really important that we keep protesting when our people get killed, when our people get murdered. murdered by the police, but we have to remember it's just as important that we celebrate Black life, that is as much a part of the resistance. And that's what today is really about. We're protesting the murder of Dominique Franklin, and we're celebrating Black life and our ability to keep on loving and keep on living in spite of it all.
Put this together because I go to protests all the time. I go to protests every week. And I'm surrounded by people crying and screaming and there's so much grief and yelling at this system that has never really been for their growth or their well-being. So I wanted this to be not asking the system to change for us, but saying in the face of death, we bring life. And you see right now, this is life. This is like family that's out here. Like we knew him. This ain't no activist. This is our family and this is our response.
It's a family reunion.
Every time.